right, we're ready to begin.
Okay, get my gavel out, make it official. And good morning. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Lacey Hearings Examiner to order. For the record, today is April 19th, 2022 at 10 a.m. We have one item on the agenda at 10. This is number 21-306, involving a request for approval of a conditional use permit or CUP to allow construction of a 10,000 square foot emergency medical office building with associated parking, stormwater landscaping, and other improvements on an approximately 1.96 acre property at 4312 Pacific Avenue Southeast. My name is Andrew Reeves. I'm a hearing examiner with Sound Law Center, who the city has selected to hold certain land use application hearings like this one. And today it will be my role to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether this proposal complies with the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, and other long-term planning documents, as well as the specific requirements for approval of a conditional use permit under the municipal code. To that end, I received 31 exhibits in advance of the hearing that I had an opportunity to review. These include a staff report prepared by city staff, the various application materials themselves, including a project narrative and sort of addressing all the criteria under the zoning code related to this use. Information on a proposed boundary line adjustment, as I believe the actual property does involve 5 separate lots that the applicant intends to consolidate. More general information, the project plans themselves, information on the review that occurred by the city's various agencies and departments. A few public comments, I believe 4 ultimately, that were received in advance to the hearing related to the proposal, generally in support of what is being proposed here. Information on traffic, stormwater, and other technical information. Information on the notice that went out in relation to the application, as well as today's hearing, and a few other documents also of a technical nature. So I'm going to admit those 31 exhibits into the record. Should anyone have additional exhibits they'd like admitted into the record, let me know when it's your opportunity to testify, and I'll address admitting additional exhibits at that time. Speaking of testimony, our testimony today will be under oath or affirmation. That's because we're my decision to be appealed under our state's Land Use Petition Act, or LUPA. The recording of today's hearing, as well as the admitted exhibits and my decision, would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. I may and often do ask questions of those that are testifying. I'm not trying to trip anyone up, just trying to ensure I have a thorough understanding of the proposal so that within 10 business days of the record closing, I'm able to produce a decision that is hopefully clear and legally defensible. Finally, the order that we're going to follow today is, I believe, first we're going to hear from the applicant team, who will give an overview of the proposal and sort of discuss the process that led us to today's hearing. Then we'll hear from city staff, who can fill in any gaps, answer any additional questions, and provide any additional information they feel that myself or members of the public should be aware of in advance of my making a decision on the proposal. Then we'll check and see if there are members of the public that have attended. The only attendee I see is Rick Walk, who is not a member of the public unless something's changed. So thank you for attending, Rick, who is with the city. But we will check at that point in the hearing to see if any members of the public have joined. And if so, they will have an opportunity to testify. And then following that, if appropriate and necessary, we'll turn it back to the applicant and city staff to respond to any such testimony. So that's the sort of order we're going to follow. I thank everyone for being here. And do we have a designated person on behalf of the applicant that I should begin with? If so, can you raise a hand perhaps?
Blake, do you want me to go and share my screen as the lead for this?
Yeah, go ahead, Greg, and I'll
All right.
supplement as needed.
Okay, awesome.
So we'll start with Greg Johnson, it sounds
Yeah.
like. So I'm going to
Yep.
get Mr. Johnson sworn in. Thank you for being here, sir. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And can you just clearly spell your name for the audio recording and explain your role with the proposal?
Yeah, my name is Greg Johnson. That's Greg Johnsson. And I'm the architect on the project.
Great. Thank you for being here. Go right ahead.
Sure. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. And
Certainly.
we put together a little outline of the project, as you would probably expect. Share. Can everybody see my screen?
I can.
Awesome.
And
Okay.
is this something the applicant would like to make an exhibit, or is this just demonstrative?
It's a great question. I don't know. Is there a recommendation from the rest of our, this is just a very simple high level summary. So in my mind, it's probably not needed to be, submitted in any formal way. So.
Okay, if someone changes their mind and chimes in otherwise, we can address it at that point. For now, I'll treat it as demonstrative and I'll let you proceed, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, thank you. So the way we've set this up, I've got a handful of slides here describing the overall building, and then about 7 or 8 slides in, there's a site plan with some other information that Blake and his team can take the lead on. So that's kind of how we've set this up. So anyway, this is the exterior of the building as if you're standing kind of in the back, so to speak. I'll go to the next one here. You can see this is a 3D view showing as if you were a bird flying at Pacific and Golf Club looking down onto the building. Obviously, this is all whited out. We've got more details here to share with you, but just kind of want to give you the sense of how this will sit on the corner, Golf Club going off to the right, Pacific off to the left, and kind of the general shape of the building. Okay. And then if we take a little closer look, excuse me, this is looking kind of near the front door as if you're walking along Golf Club Road. So you can see on the right, there's the main patient drop off. You can see the building, and you'll see this more in a few others. It's kind of got some metal panels. It's got some dark wood. It's a metal material, but it's made to look like wood. Sort of insets as you go around the building, kind of give it its character. Continuing on around that side, I'm at Golf Club, kind of looking back, getting near Pacific here. You'll see again, the big corner element here with the logo that, was required through the Lacey code as being at least 30 feet high. I believe that's right. And that's how high it is. We've also, as you can tell, have a lot of glass and glazing along this particular wall. There was a 30% minimum, so you can see how that kind of is taking shape for what we're suggesting here. There's a little covered canopy here that gets you into some support zones into the building. But this is kind of the corner entry piece that's required as well. I keep walking around. I'm now standing, unfortunately, in the Pacific road, but gets you a sense of the sort of the elevation along Pacific. Again, a lot of glass to meet the 30% minimum rule. You can see that we have this continued use of the wood look metal, kind of give it some character, the corner element. And then these are some screen. This is actually the top of the wall of the building with some signage we're working on. And then this is actually blocking some of the mechanical units that are up on the roof.
HVAC screening, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then as we continue, well, you can get a glimpse here. I should have said, or maybe just elaborate, we're looking at the porch stoop terrace requirements that are a part of this particular building development. There were several to choose from, but that's the path we've gone down. And so when we get down here, you'll see we're sort of introducing this element that's required to block the ambulance turnaround. Just kind of see a little bit here, which will become evident, I think, on the site plan in a moment. But so that's how we've kind of integrated a low wall and this kind of pergola feature to give some screening to that particular area of the site. Okay. And this again is sort of a shot from the, like at the beginning, kind of the back corner. This is Golf Club back over here. This is Pacific over here. Again, a lot of glazing on the building, the drop off for the patients. This is an enclosure for the generator for the emergency backup that's required for the building. So that's, been screened very well per the requirements. And again, a little bit different character on this side where you park, but very, very much in keeping with the rest of the building. This is the higher canopy where I mentioned the ambulances would be coming and turning around and dropping off here. That's a requirement within the code to have a separate ambulance entry versus the public. So that's kind of what we're showing here. And really, that's about it around the building. Blake, I don't know if you want to sort of take it from there, and unless anybody has any questions on kind of the flyby of the building.
No, not at the moment, but I'll swear in Blake Lord. So do you swear affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And could you just clearly spell your name for the audio and explain your role here with the project?
Yes, thank you. My name is Blake Lord. It is spelled BLAKELORD, and I'm with KPFF Consulting Engineers, which is the civil engineer for the project.
Great, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Already? Okay. All right, so as shown on the screen is the proposed site plan for the project. As Greg was alluding to, the site is located within the City of Lacey's Woodland District and meets the Woodland District form-based code, especially with regards to the building appearance and the frontages. Like Greg was alluding to, the porch and stoop methodology to meet the Woodland Square Loop or the Woodland District zoning code is presented on this site, which essentially means that the building is raised a foot or two above adjacent grades. So the building is generally sitting up to resemble a porch. Additionally, frontage improvements are proposed on Golf Club Road, Selma Street, and Pacific Avenue, as shown on the screen, all based on City of Lacey codes and requirements. The frontage improvements consist of a sidewalk, landscaping, and screening, including irrigation and planters. There are different dimensions for the improvements, but they are all to meet the city of code requirements and what they have presented in the pre-app and the comments. Additionally, we have pedestrian access and circulation throughout the site, as you can see, with several walkways that go from the right-of-way to the building, as well as shown on the screen, is the 10-foot walkway that bisects the center of the site that provides access from Golf Club all the way over to Selma. Additionally, we show several driveways and connections to Golf Club in Selma for easy vehicle access and circulation. Continuing on, there, as shown on the screen, parking. We have several parking and landscaping improvements on site. As stated in excuse me, just getting my papers here. As stated in the staff report, the project site is overparked, and the applicant team does recognize this. The general intent behind the proposal is to maximize the site's use in terms of parking. As stated in condition number 5, the city has requested either justification to support the increased parking or to reduce the number of parking stalls and adjust the site plan. And so the applicant team will do one of those. We will provide the additional parking demand justification, or we will adjust the site to meet city code. Like Greg mentioned, there is an ambulance turnaround and bay provided to the west of the site, or to the west of the building, excuse me, that is right there. And the turnaround is sized for an ambulance to turn around and back into the building. And so we've used auto turn movers to do that. And then lastly, on the site, we have, and is what is not shown on the site plan, is we do have utility improvements throughout the site that's provided to support the development and meet City of Lacey code. A water main is provided and is looped through the site, as well as building services are provided for the water, including fire. A fire line and all appurtenances are provided on the site, not shown in this plan, but are in the submitted documents. Additionally, there is a sewer service that will service the building that runs from the building to Selma Street, And lastly, the site is proposed to include LID stormwater facilities that include treatment and infiltration of all on-site generated stormwater runoff. Lastly, I do want to take a minute to thank the city planning and review staff for their thorough review and comprehensiveness for this project. The city has been very helpful with us in getting to this point and working through the design and permitting process and answering our questions and allowing the project to meet the city form-based code for the Woodland District and then still maintaining the developer's vision for the site. So I do want to thank the city staff. Other than that, if there's no more questions or if there are any questions, I don't have anything done at this time.
Great, thank you. So, yep, you had already addressed one of my big questions, which was the parking. And so the applicant understands what that particular issue is and will either submit the necessary details or study, as it were, information on why more parking or this amount of parking is necessary, or alternatively, alternative site plans would be included that would remove parking spaces. Looking at the overall site plan, clearly it wouldn't be difficult to alter the number of spaces down at this point. It's always altering the number of spaces up that causes more of a headache. So that part is clear. And then the form-based code system is becoming more and more common throughout the US and here in Western Washington. The one question I had was, I think the original plans had discussed sort of vegetative landscaping down adjacent to, I guess, Pacific there. But I believe Mr. Johnson's PowerPoint and it kind of showed that you've already made the adjustment to sort of use the pergola fence concept as opposed to vegetative screening. Is that accurate, Mr. Lord?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so I know we weren't initially going to include the PowerPoint. I actually think it would be helpful ultimately to include this as an exhibit because I think it touches on that issue in particular. And then if there were members of the public that wanted to sort of see what the project looks like, I think the sim renderings, as it were, of people walking around the building give a good idea there. So why don't we make the PowerPoint from applicant exhibit 32. Okay, just walking through my notes here. And then you had discussed stormwater, where obviously it's early in the review phase, but I believe your team in particular, reviewed stormwater, and the idea is that the soils on site are such that all the stormwater can be infiltrated on site. And this is, I believe, in a critical aquifer recharge area. So there will be assurances that all the sort of dirty stormwater is treated, all the paved, et cetera, before infiltration. Is that right, Mr. Lord?
Yes, that is correct. The area is located within, I believe, a Category 1 critical aquifer recharge area. And the stormwater approach for the project is to collect all on-site stormwater and send it to infiltration facilities. Any stormwater that is pollution generating will be treated with mechanical treatment that will provide enhanced stormwater treatment that will meet the requirements of the critical aquifer recharge area. And then from there, all the water, once it's clean, will go some subsurface into underground rock galleries where the water will be detained and infiltrated on subsurface. And it's planned that all runoff will be infiltrated subsurface.
Okay. Okay, so that addresses the low impact development techniques that Department of Ecology likes to see. So thank you for explaining that. Just going through my notes. Let's see. I believe, again, this might have been your team at one point sort of addressed the various criteria and the process and how it works. At various points, there is reference to site plan review being required. And if city staff is the better resource to ask this question, fine. I'm just trying to make sure I know my role. I know there's a conditional use permit, obviously under review. The boundary line adjustment, I believe, is beyond the scope of what I personally will be addressing. But in terms of site plan review, what is your understanding of the process, Mr. Lord? Is it being consolidated with this current process, or has it already been addressed in your mind?
So in my mind, the lot consolidation, so let's back up, is ultimately, there are 5 subject parcels that are shown on this site plan. And to prohibit or to help with the development, the parcels should be combined to create one comprehensive parcel. And so that was the intent of the lot consolidation. We did receive some various review comments from city staff on the lot consolidation. So there's still some work to be done in order to get that ready for recording. But in my mind, it is on the way to supporting the development and will be recorded prior to, I believe, issuance to permits, I think was one of the conditions. But it is underway and is tracking by the team.
So that's the BLA part, and then the site plan review. Do you, in your mind, is that potentially wrapped into this CUP, or is that part of the BLA process?
It's separate, I believe, and I would defer that question to city staff during their turn, but I do think it's separate.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see. And then in turn, let me make sure I didn't have any other specific. From the review PowerPoint and even for the materials, my understanding is that they're all 5 lots at one point or another had been developed. Is that right, Mr. Lord?
That is correct. There is various residential, and I do even think maybe some commercial structures out there. The staff report mentioned a tattoo parlor, but they were developed. They've since been, some of the historic homes or structures have been removed, while there are still 3 homes remaining on the subject parcels.
Sure. So it's a highly impacted site on some level. And the question I'm ultimately trying to get to is one of trees, to the extent that in many jurisdictions, I believe in Lacey, sometimes there are certain requirements related to tree removal or replanting, et cetera. I couldn't find a ton of information on that particular issue. Has the applicant looked into that issue? And from the overview, I can see several trees are clearly proposed on the frontages and internal to the parking lot. But in terms of what the site looked like before to what it will look like, what's your sense of where things are at in terms of tree replacement and canopy replacement?
Yeah, in terms of tree replacement, so like you said, the site has been home to either residential or commercial structures. So there has been previous clearing and grading activities on the subject parcels. There are still a few remaining trees, some large, some small, throughout the project site. And our submittal materials did include identifying the trees planned for removal, as well as the replanting trees in order to meet city code for the development. We not only looked on site, but we looked on the adjacent frontages because there are quite a few existing trees along Golf Club. And so all that was taken into account in the proposal.
Okay. And I believe that addresses the specific questions that I had for the applicant team in terms of the technical issues. Did you have other members of your team you were hoping to call on before we move to city staff?
Unless there's anyone from Multicare that would like to speak, I don't believe any of the design team needs to speak at this time.
Okay, if we can stop sharing the screen, and then if there is anyone from Multicare who obviously is going to ultimately be running the site that wanted to say anything, now would be a great time if you want to raise your hand or hit the raise hand feature on. Okay, it looks like Will Calicote.
Yes. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I don't recall, are you an attorney representing the group or are you a normal human?
I'm a normal human. My role within Multicare is I'm the president at Multicare Capital Medical Center and Thurston County market leader for Multicare.
Excellent. I'm going to swear you in. Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And can you just spell your name for the record? You already explained who you are.
You bet. First name is Will, W-I-L-L. Last name Callicoat, C-A-L-L-I-C-O-A-T.
Great. Thank you for being here. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I totally agree with the decision to put the materials in the public record. Our mission statement at Multicare is partnering for healing and a healthy future, partnering being such a key word of that, including our partners with the city and so on. And part of that is establishing trust. And one of those is just being very transparent. That's a high trait of being able to establish trust, and want to make sure that we can be transparent in all that we do, and having the material submitted in the public comment, I think, would go a long way with that. We're definitely very excited for this project. It's definitely, excuse me, expanding access to care is something that's much needed in this community. As I read a few of the public comments that were submitted, and that seems to go right in line with what we are after. One of our strategies within Multicare is increasing access to care. And with the current hospital emergency departments being very crowded, access to care is top of mind for us right now. In a lot of situations, when you go to the emergency department at a hospital, it's not uncommon to be there for 5, 6, 8 hours or even more. And obviously that doesn't lead to a very positive experience. And so we're definitely looking to add access by adding 10 more rooms, and that will decrease the wait times and also increase the patient experience when they go to an emergency department. When you're experiencing an emergency, it's definitely a very vulnerable time, and you're scared and not feeling well. And so when you're stuck in an institution for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, that's obviously not a positive thing. So definitely looking to address that with this project, and happy to be here and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. First off, I assume the applicant had an opportunity to review the staff report prepared by city staff. Is that accurate, Mr. Calico?
Yes, at least I have, and it looks like I'm seeing head nods from the rest of the team, so yes.
Okay, any issue with the recommended conditions of approval that staff believes would be appropriate related to the project?
From a technical standpoint, I would cede to Greg and Blake for that.
Okay, if I can go, either one, just say who's talking so we know for the record.
Blake will go.
Blake,
we do
go
not
ahead.
have any additions or changes to the record. The record and staff report was written very well.
Okay, so no issue with the proposed conditions of approval ultimately.
Correct.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you. I don't have any further questions other than one on timing, Mr. Calcode. In a perfect world, what's the timeline look like in terms of, when the process begins and completion of the building, et cetera?
Yeah, so in July of last year, Thurston County EMS issued a press release that there is definitely a shortage of emergency department capacity in this region, and they felt like their ambulance rigs are having to go from one hospital to the other, just looking for an opening. So as soon as possible, as I'm sure you probably hear with a lot of different projects, but if we could be open by, in my head, I've got June of next year would be the most ideal time. And so backing in from that, the timeline obviously requires a lot of technical steps to get there. But the sooner the better from my standpoint, from my non-technical standpoint.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Part of my task on these conditional use permits is to note or recommend a timeline, and it makes sense. Obviously, if you were open 2 years ago, that would have been even better, obviously, but it is what it is. So the plan is to get open as soon as possible in without cutting any of the permitting corners, obviously. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's fair.
Okay, great. Well, then I don't have any further questions, I believe, for the applicant team. So unless you have other folks you were hoping to call on, I would next turn to city staff. Okay, so I think with that, I'll go to Sarah Schelling. And thank you for being here. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And can you just spell your name for the recording and explain your role here at the city?
Yes, my name is Sarah Schelling. That's Sarah. Last name Schelling, Schelling. And I'm a senior planner with the city of Lacey. And I did the review, the land use review for this project.
Thank you. And just to clarify right at the outset, I had indicated initially there were 31 exhibits that I received in advance. I made the applicant's PowerPoint 32, but does that track with what the city was hoping I was looking at in advance of the hearing?
That's it. We didn't receive anything, any additional public comments or applicant comments between the notice of hearing and today.
Okay, great. So Michelle, did you have additional information you wanted to provide before we dive into? I just had a few questions at this point, and many of them have already been answered. So
I do want to clarify some of the items that you asked the applicant about. The first one being the form-based code frontage requirements. The condition for the lot frontage is actually not, Pacific Avenue meets the requirements of the form-based code as proposed and submitted with the land use application. It was Golf Club Road that showed the landscape frontage. And so that's what condition, I'm going to look and find the condition number. It is condition number 2 requires that Golf Club Road be addressed to meet the requirements of the form-based code, which would require an urban wall or fence landscape frontage for the length of Golf Club Road. Or alternatively, if there was a proposal for an additional building, the building would be built to Golf Club Road.
okay.
Landscape frontage is not a permitted frontage type for Golf Club Road. And so that was not shown on the site plan that you looked at today.
Okay, so I think I must have mixed that up in my head. So thank you for clarifying. And I think it'd be helpful to look at the overview at some point to make sure it's totally clear in my head.
I will share my screen.
Thank you.
I also have a PowerPoint somewhere.
Oh, you have a PowerPoint you wanted to share as well, Michelle?
I do. I can share on a PowerPoint the
Oh, sure. Well, why don't we do that? So if there's a staff PowerPoint, why don't we make that exhibit 33? And then as you're showing the PowerPoint, we can sort of focus in on the form-based code frontage issue that we were just discussing, if that works for you.
What are you seeing right now?
I am seeing you look like it's not doing what you're hoping it should be doing.
Okay, then that is what, let's see. I want to share a screen and okay.
Progress.
I think so.
There we go.
So this is a
It's not fully, I don't think it's launched yet.
oh, okay, let's see. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, there we go.
Hey, there we go.
So this is just an aerial overview of generally the location of the project in relation to Center City, the Woodland zoning district, or Lacey Midtown. So Lacey City Hall is located right here. The project is on the corner of Pacific, running east and west, Golf Club Road running north and south, and Selma Street. So it's bounded by 3 streets. The next slide shows a little bit closer, and this is the frontage we're talking about.
Okay.
That is landscape frontage from the building on, heading north towards the adjacent uses. So this is the frontage that we would be looking to have revised on plans prior to building construction to meet the requirements of the form-based code. If that helps.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. So, and I'll ask the applicant about that once you and I are done
Okay.
talking, but
Okay. The other,
just to clarify that point, Michelle, can you just touch on under the form-based code, what is theoretically required here on the frontage of golf course?
so the back of sidewalk, there is various different types of frontages. And when I talk about frontage, I don't talk about like frontage improvements in terms of traffic. I talk about back of sidewalk frontages, and golf club road, in the form-based code. The intent of golf club road was to be kind of a main street and to have a presence of building on the front. And so there are, I think, 6 or 7 different frontage types throughout the district that can be used, and specific streets have specific requirements. And golf club road is one that has a specific built form associated with it, either building, this forecourt, which would still have a building presence at the build to line, or alternatively, you can do an urban wall, which is a low wall with some landscape in front of it, or you can do a wall and trellis combination, an urban fence and trellis combination, which puts structures on the build to line to give an appearance of form in the district. Because the intent of the district is to encourage density. The focus is less on use and more on building form and creating a built environment that's comfortable for pedestrians.
Right. So as I'm walking down golf course, the idea is it feels like I'm in an urban environment, and instead of a big parking lot next to me, there's a building or something with a little bit of height,
That's
trellis wall, whatever. But the idea is that feeling that you're in a corridor that's, I'm in Manhattan as opposed to, suburban Olympia, Lacey area, right?
Exactly. Without seas of parking lots immediately adjacent to you. It feels just more walkable, pedestrian oriented.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
The other thing I wanted to touch on was your question about site plan review. And we would say that the site plan review is combined with this application. It's a combined consolidated review. We didn't have a specific site plan review application submitted with this, but the site plans, the landscaping plans, all the other elements are incorporated with the conditional use permit review. So we would include this as the conditional site plan review as well. So we would stamp a site plan that meets the requirements of the final approval that is issued by the city council. So the recommendation we have before you today has recommended conditions. If you move those forward to the city council, those become conditions of both the conditional use and the site plan approval.
Okay, I think I got it. So there are, I believe, some specific criteria that should be addressed for site plan review. And so in terms of my ultimate recommendation, and I think that was another point of clarification if I misstated, I believe I make a recommendation for conditional use permits in the city of Lacey, and it's ultimately the council that makes the final decision. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I would address the CUP criteria, which are sort of scattered throughout Title 16, and then also the specific site plan criteria and a consolidated decision, which is a recommendation that would then go to council. Is that, in your mind, the best way forward?
Yes.
And in terms of that, I don't get involved with the boundary line adjustment, correct?
That's correct. So the boundary line adjustment, it was submitted as part of the consolidated review. It's currently under review, and there's a condition that says prior to any buildings that are constructed that would conflict with property lines, that boundary line adjustment would need to be recorded.
Got it. Okay, I think that all makes sense. I think we can probably, or you had a full PowerPoint if you wanted to go through. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think the applicant did a good job running through the conditions or running through the project. My PowerPoint is really just the site plans and the landscaping plans. The other thing you mentioned was in regards to trees, and I'll just touch on, let's see, I have a landscaping plan. In the city, we do have a tree protection and tree preservation and protection ordinance in this zoning district, tree tracks are not required. But there is still the requirement that they meet the minimum tree per lot standards, which is 2 trees per 10,000 square feet of site area. So we'll review their landscaping plans to make sure that they meet both the parking lot landscaping requirements for tree planting, as well as the requirements for the minimum number of trees per lot.
Okay.
And then I would just say that as we've been talking about, this is a form-based code or a hybrid form-based code, and the intent of the code is to move more away from allowing uses and allowing and prohibiting certain uses to more permissive in terms of use and prescriptive in terms of building form. An emergency, this has been reviewed as a conditional use permit. It really is more like a urgent care facility, which would be permitted outright in an urgent care would be permitted outright. I think the main difference for this is it's 24-hour operations as well as its ambulance bay, which makes it a conditional use permit. They do show the building meeting the requirements of the form-based code, and we have included conditions to try and address any compatibility issues related to the ambulance bay, the parking fields, and the 24-hour operations as well, which I think is what the conditional use permit requirement is seeking to address. I would say that this is a urban developing or an urban highly developed area, and this use it isn't incompatible, especially with the conditions related to parking lot lighting that we have included on the or as recommendations in the staff report. I'd be happy to take any questions. I don't know if, yes.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know if you were at the end, if that's the
No,
end of the PowerPoint.
We've recommended approval. One of the form-based code does talk about desired uses in the zone, and medical is one of those uses that is desired within the district. And so this is a site that is well suited for redevelopment, and we recommend approval.
Great. Just so that so the zoning is clearly Woodland District, and then in the Woodland District, under the form-based code, there's sort of further subdivision into neighborhood types, and I think it's covered well in the staff report. We don't need to go in deep, but this particular five lots covers 2 neighborhood types, but staff essentially is going, the building is sort of in the one type, and so that's kind of working throughout. Is that, again, I think it's well detailed in the staff report, but with that said, is the comprehensive plan designation Woodland District? Is there a specific? It is. Okay, it's just Woodland District.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. All right. And then just so it's sort of clear on the record, in terms of the parking over parked issue, what in staff's mind ultimately, is it just sort of the justification would be a memo that kind of addresses why we believe we need more parking than is allowed, or?
Yes, or a modification to the site plan. So the materials that we've received talk about it being a low volume clinic with 8 to 12 staff members. And so I think that in terms of justifying additional parking, we would need to see why they think patient load or numbers of staffing would require 14 stalls over what would be permitted.
Got it. Okay. Okay, and then no major changes to the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, et cetera, that would have an impact on this proposal since it was deemed complete in terms of vesting?
Nope.
Always the answer I like to hear. Thank you. Okay, I don't believe I had any other specific questions for city staff. I know you have some other staff members there. Did you intend on calling on or want to call on anyone else at this point?
I don't think so, unless you have questions that our Public Works, Tom Stiles is here to answer any Public Works related questions if you have them. If not,
I can't, the only one I thought of, but I think it was addressed in the materials. I know in my notes, I had said, I put impervious surface limitations ? And that, I guess my only thought was, are there any concerns about the amount of new impervious surface? Are there any specific code requirements that needed to be addressed? I'm sure Mr. Stiles can answer that, or you might know the answer off the top of your head, but.
Yeah, so there's not a development coverage limitation in the Woodland District. So stormwater requirement will need to just, or the stormwater report and stormwater plans will address impervious.
Okay. Well, then I think that took care of that final question I had. So while it's always a joy to hear from Tom Stiles, I don't believe it's necessary in this instance. So I did want to go back to the applicant just to make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of golf club and what we were just talking about. So maybe if we can go back to Mr. Lord for a second. If you're the right person, Mr. Lord,
Yeah, I'll speak here and then I'll throw it to Greg, but I do think the applicant team is totally fine with meeting the code for golf club road frontage.
got it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just concur with that. We'll go offline and look deeper into the condition number 2 that Ms. Schelling mentioned.
Okay. Anything final from your team you wanted to convey, Mr. Lord or Mr. Johnson? Sorry.
I'm good, thank you.
No, I'm good too. Appreciate your time.
Mr. Calicote, anything on behalf of Multicare you wanted to convey?
Just again, I appreciate the process and the thought that went into it and the partnership. So thank you.
Great. And finally, Ms. Schelling, anything on behalf of city staff before we end today's hearing?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, I just want to do one check-in. The only attendee, again, is a member of city staff. So no members of the public have joined us. So no need to take public testimony, but thank you everyone for being here, being available. Based on my review of the record, I don't see any issue with approving the proposal with the conditions that have been recommended by city staff. So it is my intent to close the record today and get to work producing a decision here in the next couple of weeks that will be approving the proposal with those recommended conditions. So good luck with the project. Certainly the kind of thing every community needs more of. So one more thing from Sarah Schelling.
Yes, I just want to just to make sure everybody's aware, once we receive your recommendation, it is a recommendation to the council. So once we receive that, it'll be scheduled on the next available city council schedule. So if the hearings examiner's recommendation comes in 2 weeks, we'd probably be looking at early June for a council meeting. Council meetings are the first and third Thursdays of the month.
Okay.
And you'll receive,
Yes.
send out the notice of recommendation with the date and time of the city council meeting. And that is just it's not an open public meeting. You are certainly encouraged to attend, but no testimony taken at that meeting.
This was the record. This was the open public meeting. And then at the council, it's a closed record. Do they accept the recommendation, right, Michelle?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay. So anyways, I think we can go ahead and close the record. We will, city staff will send along to my office the 2 PowerPoints, the applicant PowerPoint and staff's own PowerPoint, which I made 32 and 33. But we'll close the record today, and I don't think we have any holidays. So within 2 weeks, hopefully you should get my recommendation, which will be a consolidated decision that covers both the CUP and site plan review, as we discussed today. And then that recommendation will end up before the city council, who will make the final decision. So with that, I think we can conclude today's hearing. Again, thank you, everybody. And hopefully you get some nice weather down in Lacey the rest of the week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hope springs eternal.
Thanks so much.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.